Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now, if you think your family gatherings are intense, imagine if your uncle was the president, your aunt was a cabinet minister, and your cousin was negotiating international trade deals over braai. It's a whole different level of family drama. Today, we're diving deep into the world of political power in my home country. We're counting down the top 10 most powerful political families in South Africa. From the struggle against apartheid to the corridors of power in the modern-day Pretoria, certain names have echoed through the generations, shaping the destiny of a nation. It's a story of legacy, sacrifice, and sometimes controversy. These aren't just families, they are dynasties. Their influence extends far beyond a single election cycle, weaving a complex web of connections that touch every aspect of South African life, from the economy to social policy. Understanding these family ties is crucial to understanding how power operates in the Rainbow Nation. It's like the Marvel cinematic universe, but with more parliamentary debates and fewer capes. The lines between personal relationships and political appointments can sometimes get blurry, creating a landscape that is both fascinating and, let's be honest, a little bit messy. It's a system where your surname can be both a blessing and a burden, opening doors while also inviting intense scrutiny. So, grab your rooibos tea, get comfortable, and let's unpack this together. We'll explore how these families rose to prominence, the impact they've had, and the legacy they continue to build, or, in some cases, struggle to maintain. We'll look at the heroes of the liberation struggle and the power players of today, examining how their personal histories have become intertwined with the national story of South Africa. It's a tale of revolution, power, and the enduring question of what it means to lead a nation still grappling with its past and forging its future. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with a name that is not just known in South Africa, but around the entire world, the Mandelas. You can't talk about South African politics without saying the name Mandela. It's like trying to talk about basketball without mentioning Michael Jordan. It just doesn't work. The legacy, of course, begins with Nelson Mandela, or Madiba, the man who went from political prisoner to the nation's first democratically elected president. He wasn't just a leader. He became a global symbol of reconciliation and freedom, a moral compass for a world that desperately needed one. His 27 years in prison on Robben Island became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. But the Mandela name is not just about one man. As iconic as he was, the family's involvement in the struggle against apartheid was deep and wide. His second wife, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, was a formidable political force in her own right, a controversial but undeniably powerful figure who kept the flame of resistance burning. She was known as the Mother of the Nation, and for many she represented the uncompromising, defiant spirit of the movement. Her story is complex, filled with both immense sacrifice and moments that have been heavily debated, but her impact is absolutely undeniable. She was a leader who refused to be silenced, even when the apartheid regime tried its hardest. The political thread runs through the generations. Their daughters, Zenani and Zinzi, both carved out their own paths in public service. Zenani served as an ambassador to Argentina and later South Korea, representing South Africa on the global stage. Zinzi, who sadly passed away in 2020, was also a diplomat, serving as the ambassador to Denmark. She was known for being outspoken, much like her mother, and never shied away from confronting difficult truths about post-apartheid South Africa. She carried the family's legacy of activism with a fiery passion that was all her own. Even now, the next generation is stepping into the spotlight. Ndileka Mandela, Nelson's eldest grandchild, is a social activist and author, focusing on rural development and women's health through her foundation. Her work continues the family's commitment to social justice, albeit away from the direct glare of party politics. Then you have Mandla Mandela, a grandson who has taken a more direct political route, serving as a member of parliament for the ANC and as the chief of the Mvezo Traditional Council. He is the custodian of the family's heritage in the Eastern Cape, blending traditional leadership with modern politics. The Mandela name carries an immense weight. It's a banner of freedom and a heavy cloak of expectation. For any member of the family, stepping into public life means being constantly measured against the towering legacy of their patriarch. It is a legacy that has opened doors but also created a standard that is almost impossible to live up to. They are not just a family, they are a living piece of South African history, and their influence, whether direct or symbolic, continues to shape the national conversation about leadership, justice, and what it means to be South African. From a name synonymous with liberation, we move to one that, for many South Africans, has become synonymous with controversy, the Zumas. The Zuma years. It was a time of fire pools, state capture, and a president who could sing and dance his way out of almost any political scandal. At the center of it all is, of course, Jacob Zuma, a charismatic figure who rose through the ranks of the ANC's intelligence wing. During the struggle, he became president in 2009. His presidency was one of the most tumultuous periods in South Africa's democratic history. Zuma's connection with ordinary people was undeniable. He positioned himself as a man of the people, a traditionalist who understood the grassroots. This populist appeal was his greatest strength. However, his time in office was plagued by a constant stream of corruption allegations, culminating in the massive state capture scandal. This involved his close relationship with the Gupta family, a wealthy business family accused of using their influence with the president to loot state resources on an industrial scale. It was a saga that dominated headlines for years and led to multiple commissions of inquiry, court cases, and a deep erosion of public trust in government. But the Zuma political dynasty is not a one-man show. His family has been deeply intertwined with both business and politics. One of his ex-wives, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, is a political heavyweight in her own right. A medical doctor by training, she has held several high-profile cabinet positions, including Minister of Health and Minister of Foreign Affairs, and served as the chairperson of the African Union Commission. She even ran against Cyril Ramaphosa for the ANC presidency in 2017 in a very tight race, showing her significant political clout. Her career is long and distinguished, separate from her connection to Jacob Zuma, but their shared history is an undeniable part of their political stories. Many of Zuma's children have also been prominent, often in the business world, with their dealings frequently attracting media scrutiny. Duduzane Zuma, his son, became a particularly well-known figure due to his close business ties with the Gupta family. He was a director in several of their companies and faced his own legal battles related to state capture allegations. His ventures put a spotlight on the blurred lines between the president's family and private business interests that benefited from state connections, raising serious questions about nepotism and cronyism at the highest levels of power. The Zuma family's influence, therefore, is a complex mix of genuine political power, populist support, and deep-seated controversy. Jacob Zuma remains a hugely influential and divisive figure in KwaZulu-Natal, his home province. His recent political moves with the Umkhonto weSizwe, or MK, party show that he is far from a spent force. The Zuma name continues to command loyalty from a significant portion of the population, while for others it represents a period of profound damage to South Africa's democratic institutions. They are a dynasty that has left an indelible and deeply polarizing mark on the country. Next up, we have the family currently in the Union buildings, the Ramaphosas. Leading the charge is, of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa. His story is fascinating. He first came to prominence not as a politician, but as a powerful trade union leader, the founder of the National Union of Mine Workers. He was a key negotiator during the transition to democracy in the early 90s, working alongside Nelson Mandela. Many people actually thought he would be Mandela's successor, but politics is a funny game. Instead, he left politics and went into business. And let's just say he did pretty well for himself. And by pretty well, I mean he became one of South Africa's wealthiest individuals. His company, Shanduka Group, had interests in everything from mining to McDonald's. This business acumen was a key part of his appeal when he returned to politics. The promise was that he would use his skills to fix the economy, root out corruption, and bring a sense of stability after the chaotic Zuma years. His campaign was built on the idea of a new dawn for South Africa, a fresh start, but as he quickly found out, running a country is a bit more complicated than running a boardroom. While Cyril is the main political figure, the Ramaphosa family name carries significant weight in the business world. His wife, Dr. Tshepo Motsepe, is a medical doctor and a formidable figure in her own right. She is also the sister of one of South Africa's richest men, the mining magnate Patrice Motsepe. This connects the Ramaphosa family to another incredibly powerful and influential dynasty through marriage. This network of connections in business and politics is vast, leading to both admiration for their success and suspicion from critics who worry about the concentration of power and wealth in the hands of a few interconnected elites. The president's children have largely stayed out of the direct political limelight, but their business interests have, at times, drawn public attention. His son, Andile Ramaphosa, has faced scrutiny over business dealings, particularly a contract with the controversial company Bosasa, which was deeply implicated in state corruption. This created a political headache for the president, who had staked his reputation on fighting graft. It highlights the immense pressure and scrutiny that the children of powerful leaders face, where their every move is examined for any hint of impropriety or leveraging of the family name. So the Ramaphosa dynasty is one defined by the intersection of immense wealth and political power. Their influence is wielded not just through political office, but through boardrooms, foundations, and powerful family networks. The challenge for President Ramaphosa has been to navigate the perception that he is a representative of the business elite, while also addressing the deep inequality that plagues South Africa. The Fala farm scandal, involving a large sum of foreign currency stolen from his property, has further complicated this image, raising new questions about his wealth and business affairs. Their story is a modern South African tale of power, money, and the difficult balancing act of leadership. Now, let's talk about a family whose name is woven into the very fabric of the African National Congress and the struggle for liberation, the Sisulus. If the ANC had a royal family, the Sisulus would be it. Their story is one of unwavering dedication, sacrifice, and intellectual leadership that spans nearly a century. The patriarch and matriarch, Walter and Albertina Sisulu, were giants of the anti-apartheid movement. They were mentors, strategists, and moral leaders who dedicated their entire lives to the cause of a free South Africa. Walter Sisulu was a key figure in the ANC, a mentor to Nelson Mandela, and one of the main strategists behind the movement's shift towards more militant resistance in the 1950s. He spent 26 years in prison on Robben Island alongside Mandela. While Walter was imprisoned, Albertina Sisulu became one of the most important leaders of the United Democratic Front, a massive anti-apartheid coalition in the 1980s. She was a nurse by profession, but a warrior by calling, enduring arrests, banning orders, and constant harassment from the state while raising 5 children and keeping the spirit of resistance alive. She was the rock upon which many activists stood. The commitment to public service was passed down to their children like a family heirloom. Their son, Max Sisulu, has had a distinguished political career, serving as the Speaker of the National Assembly from 2009 to 2014. It's one of the most powerful positions in the South African government, and his tenure was marked by a calm and respected demeanor. He brought a sense of gravitas and historical weight to the role, a constant reminder of the sacrifices his family had made for the very democracy he was now helping to lead. Another child, Lindiwe Sisulu, has been one of the most prominent women in post-apartheid politics. She has held a remarkable number of cabinet positions, including Minister of Defense, Minister of Public Service, Minister of Human Settlements, Minister of International Relations, and most recently Minister of Tourism. Her long career at the highest levels of government makes her one of the most experienced and powerful figures in the ANC. She has also been a contender for the party's presidency, showcasing her own ambition and political base. The Sisulu legacy is one of intellectualism, integrity, and a deep, deep commitment to the ANC. Their family home in Orlando West, Soweto, was a central hub for the liberation movement for decades. Unlike some other political families, their influence is seen less in vast business empires and more in their continued presence within the state and the ruling party. They are seen as custodians of the ANC's historical values. The name Sisulu commands enormous respect and represents a direct, unbroken line to the moral and ethical foundations of the struggle against apartheid. If the Sisulus were the heart of the struggle, the Mbekis were its brain. This is a dynasty of intellectuals, of thinkers, of strategists. Their influence has been less about populist charisma and more about shaping the ideology and direction of the ANC and, by extension, the country. The story begins with Govan Mbeki, a towering intellectual, a communist and a revered leader of the struggle. He was a writer and a theorist who spent over 2 decades on Robben Island with Mandela and Zulu, where he continued to teach and write, shaping the minds of a generation of activists. His son, Thabo Mbeki, was groomed for leadership from a young age. He spent decades in exile representing the ANC across the world, from London to Lusaka. He was a master diplomat and a key architect of the ANC's foreign policy. When he became president in 1999, succeeding Nelson Mandela, he brought a completely different style to the office. He was the philosopher king, the intellectual president. His speeches were often dense, academic affairs, filled with references to history, poetry, and philosophy. He was focused on his vision of an African Renaissance, a continent taking its rightful place on the world stage. Mbeki's presidency was a period of significant economic growth and stability for South Africa. He implemented macroeconomic policies that were praised by the international business community and helped to reduce the country's debt. He was a respected statesman on the African continent, mediating conflicts and championing African solutions to African problems. However, his presidency was also marked by significant controversy, most notably his government's disastrous response to the HIV and AIDS pandemic. His denialism and skepticism towards the scientific consensus cost hundreds of thousands of lives and remains a dark stain on his legacy. The Mbeki family's influence extends to Thabo's brother Moletsi Mbeki. Unlike his father and brother, Moletsi has not been an ANC politician. Instead, he has become one of its sharpest critics from the inside. He is a political analyst, author and businessman who has written extensively about the failures of the post-apartheid government. He argues that the political elite has failed to transform the economy and has in many ways betrayed the ideals of the liberation struggle. His critical voice provides a fascinating counterpoint to his family's deep involvement in the ruling party, showing that even within these powerful dynasties, there is room for dissent. The Mbeki legacy is therefore one of profound intellectual contribution mixed with significant and tragic policy failures. They shaped the ideological framework of the ANC for decades. Thabo Mbeki's vision of an African Renaissance continues to inspire many, but his legacy is forever complicated by his handling of the AIDS crisis. The family represents the complex, often contradictory nature of post-apartheid leadership. A deep commitment to African empowerment coupled with moments of profound and damaging detachment from the realities faced by ordinary people. Our next family is led by a man often described as the caretaker president, the quiet intellectual who stepped in to steady the ship during a time of political turmoil. I'm talking about the Motlanthe family, led by Kgalema Motlanthe. He is one of the most respected figures in the ANC. Known for his calm demeanor, his integrity, and his deep understanding of the party's history and internal workings, he is the leader you call when things are falling apart. His rise to the presidency was a perfect example of this. In 2008, the ANC made the unprecedented decision to recall President Thabo Mbeki before the end of his term. It was a messy internal power struggle that left a vacuum at the top. The party turned to Motlanthe, who was then the deputy president of the ANC, to serve as the interim president of South Africa until the next election. He served for just under 8 months, but in that short time, he brought a sense of calm and stability to a very tense political situation. He was seen as a unifying figure, respected by both the Mbeki and Zuma factions of the party. Motlanthe's political history is deeply rooted in the struggle. Like many of his generation, he was a student activist, a member of the ANC's armed wing, and a political prisoner who spent a decade on Robben Island. This shared experience gives him an immense amount of credibility within the party. After his brief presidency, he served as deputy president under Jacob Zuma from 2009 to 2014. However, he eventually challenged Zuma for the party leadership in 2012, a move that he knew he would likely lose, but which he felt was necessary to signal his disapproval of the direction the party was heading. The Motlanthe family has largely maintained a private profile, avoiding the controversies that have plagued other political dynasties. His wife, Gugu Mtshali, is a successful businesswoman, and their connection stays mostly out of the political headlines. This is in keeping with Motlanthe's own style. He is not a flamboyant politician who seeks the spotlight. His influence comes from his reputation as a thoughtful, principled leader. He is often seen as the conscience of the ANC, a custodian of its values. Even after leaving formal government positions, Kgalema Motlanthe remains a highly influential figure. He has led several important commissions and investigations for the party and the government, including a key inquiry into the post-apartheid era's land reform policies. When he speaks, people in the ANC listen. The Motlanthe family's power is not derived from wealth or a vast network of patronage, but from the personal integrity and historical gravitas of its patriarch. He represents a different kind of political influence, one that is quiet, thoughtful, and deeply respected. Now we turn to a family and a leader whose political journey has been intertwined and often in conflict with the ANC for decades. This is the Buthelezi dynasty, led by the formidable and long-serving Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. For over half a century, Buthelezi was one of the most significant and controversial figures in South African politics. His influence is rooted in his dual role as a traditional Zulu leader and a modern politician. He was not just the leader of a political party, he was a prince, a direct descendant of the Zulu king Cetshwayo. In 1975, Buthelezi founded the Inkatha Freedom Party, or IFP. Initially, it was a cultural movement to promote Zulu identity, but it quickly became a powerful political force. During the height of apartheid, Buthelezi walked a controversial tightrope. He was the leader of the KwaZulu Bantustan, one of the ethnically based homelands created by the apartheid government. He fiercely criticized apartheid on the world stage, but he also refused to support the ANC's armed struggle and economic sanctions, which put him in direct opposition to the liberation movement. This opposition turned tragic and violent in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The period leading up to the first democratic election was marked by a brutal, low-level civil war between IFP and ANC supporters, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal and the townships around Johannesburg. Thousands of people died in this conflict. It was a dark and bloody chapter in the country's transition, and the rivalry between Buthelezi and the ANC defined the political landscape of that era. For a long time, it was uncertain if the IFP would even participate in the 1994 election. Despite this history of conflict, after the election, Buthelezi and the IFP joined the government of national unity. In a remarkable political turn, Mangosuthu Buthelezi served as the Minister of Home Affairs for 10 years under both Nelson Mandela and Thabo Mbeki. He became a familiar and often respected figure in the new democratic government, known for his work ethic and his distinctive formal style. He remained the leader of the IFP until 2019, an astonishingly long tenure, and a Member of Parliament until his death in 2023. The Buthelezi family's influence continues through its deep roots in Zulu tradition and the IFP. His children have been involved in the party and in various professional fields. The future of the dynasty's political influence now rests with the new leadership of the IFP and how they carry forward his legacy. The Buthelezi name represents a powerful stream of Zulu nationalism within South African politics, a force that has at times been a partner and at other times a fierce rival to the ANC's brand of non-racial nationalism. Their legacy is a complex one of cultural pride, political power, and a painful history of conflict. If Nelson Mandela was the symbol of the struggle inside South Africa, Oliver Tambo was its leader in exile. For 30 years he was the president of the ANC, holding the movement together from abroad, leading its diplomatic and military efforts. The Tambo family legacy is one of international statesmanship, unwavering dedication, and keeping the hope of a free South Africa alive on the world stage. Oliver Tambo was the glue. He was a brilliant lawyer, a partner in the very first black law firm in South Africa with Nelson Mandela, and a man of immense integrity. When the ANC was banned in 1960, Tambo was tasked with leaving the country to establish its mission in exile. From London, Lusaka, and other capitals, he tirelessly campaigned against apartheid. He met with heads of state, addressed the United Nations, and coordinated the activities of thousands of exiled South Africans. He was the international face of the struggle, and he did it with incredible grace and intelligence. He managed to keep a diverse and often fractious organization united around a common goal, which was a monumental achievement. His wife, Adelaide Tambo, was a powerful activist in her own right. She was a nurse and a founding member of the Afro-Asian Solidarity Movement and the Pan-African Women's Organization. While Oliver was leading the ANC's diplomatic charge, Adelaide was on the ground, organizing, fundraising, and caring for the community of exiles. She was a mother figure to many young activists who had fled South Africa, providing support and guidance in difficult and often lonely circumstances. The Tambo home in London was a hub for the anti-apartheid movement. The legacy of service has continued through their children. Their son, Dali Tambo, is a well-known media personality in South Africa. For years, he hosted a popular television show called People of the South, where he interviewed prominent figures. While not a politician in the traditional sense, his work in media has given him a platform to shape cultural conversations and keep the stories of the struggle alive for a new generation. He uses his platform to bridge the gap between South Africa's history and its present. The Tambo family's influence is, much like the Sisulus, one of moral authority and historical weight. Oliver Tambo sadly passed away in 1993, just a year before he could see his life's work come to fruition with the first democratic election. However, his name is immortalized. South Africa's main international airport in Johannesburg is named the O.R. Tambo International Airport, a fitting tribute to the man who was the country's chief diplomat for 3 decades. The Tambo name represents the internationalism of the struggle and the quiet, determined leadership that made victory possible. While we've already spoken about her in the context of the Mandela family, Winnie Madikizela Mandela was such a colossal figure that her own family, the Madikizelas, deserves its own chapter. She was born into a politically active family in the Eastern Cape. Her father was a local politician, but Winnie forged a path that was uniquely her own. For the 27 years that Nelson Mandela was in prison, she became the face of the struggle within the country. She was defiant, courageous, and utterly unwilling to be intimidated by the apartheid state. The state tried everything to break her. They arrested her, tortured her, and banished her to the small, remote town of Brandfort for 8 years, hoping to silence her. But it had the opposite effect. She became a symbol of resistance for millions of black South Africans. Her name was chanted at rallies, and her image was a constant thorn in the side of the regime. She embodied the anger and impatience of the townships, the generation that was no longer willing to wait for freedom. This earned her the title Mother of the Nation. However, her legacy is also deeply controversial. Her time in Soweto in the late 1980s was marked by violence. Her security detail, the Mandela United Football Club, was accused of kidnapping, torture, and even murder. The most infamous case was the death of a young activist named Stompie Saipe, a scandal that tarnished her reputation and followed her for the rest of her life. It created a deep division in how she was viewed. For some, she was a heroic freedom fighter. For others, she was a figure who had lost her moral compass in the brutality of the struggle. Despite the controversies, she remained a powerful political force in the new South Africa. After her divorce from Nelson Mandela, she reverted to her maiden name, Madikizela Mandela, asserting her own identity. She served as a Member of Parliament and as the head of the ANC Women's League. She remained a populist hero, a radical voice who often criticised the ANC-led government for not doing enough to address poverty and inequality. She was the unapologetic voice of the poor and marginalised until her death in 2018. The Madikizela family's influence is carried on through her legacy and her descendants, particularly her daughters Zenani and Zinzi, whom we mentioned earlier. But the Madikizela name itself represents a specific brand of politics, radical, populist and uncompromising. Winnie Madikizela Mandela's story is a powerful and often painful reminder of the brutalizing effects of apartheid and the complex, morally grey choices that people made during the struggle. She remains one of the most debated but undeniably influential figures in South African history. Finally, we come to a family from the other side of the political divide. a dynasty that presided over the final years of apartheid and played a crucial role in its dismantling the de Klerks. The family was political royalty within the Afrikaner nationalist community. F.W. de Klerk's father, Jan de Klerk, was a prominent National Party cabinet minister. His aunt was married to a previous apartheid prime minister. F.W. de Klerk was born and bred in the heart of the system he would eventually help to end. For most of his career, F.W. de Klerk was seen as a conservative, a party loyalist who rose steadily through the ranks of the National Party. He held several cabinet positions and was a firm believer in the apartheid system. When he became president in 1989, few expected any significant change. The anti-apartheid movement was at its peak. The country was under immense international pressure and the economy was suffering. But de Klerk was seen as a safe pair of hands who would maintain the status quo. Then, on February 2, 1990, he delivered a speech that stunned the world. He announced the unbanning of the ANC and other liberation movements and the unconditional release of Nelson Mandela. It was a seismic shift. De Klerk had realized that apartheid was unsustainable and that a catastrophic civil war was inevitable unless a negotiated settlement was reached. It was a pragmatic and courageous decision that set South Africa on the path to democracy. This act earned him and Nelson Mandela the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993. After the 1994 election, de Klerk served as one of two deputy presidents in Nelson Mandela's Government of National Unity, a powerful symbol of reconciliation. However, the relationship was often tense. The National Party eventually withdrew from the government, and de Klerk faded from frontline politics. In his later years, he ran a foundation focused on constitutional issues but often struggled with his legacy. He was criticized by many black South Africans for never fully apologizing for the evils of apartheid, and by many white Afrikaners for giving the country away. The de Klerk family's influence represents the end of an era. They were the last political dynasty of the old, white minority-ruled South Africa. F.W. de Klerk remains a deeply polarizing figure. Was he a visionary who saved the country from bloodshed, or a pragmatist who simply saw the writing on the wall and negotiated the best possible surrender for the apartheid regime? The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in the middle. His family's story is a crucial and complex part of the transition to a democratic South Africa. So there you have it, a whirlwind tour through 10 of the most powerful and influential political families in South Africa. From the liberation heroes like the Mandelas, Sisulus and Tambos, to the controversial power of the Zumas, the wealth of the Ramaphosas, and the complex legacies of the Buthelezis and de Klerks. As we've seen, these families haven't just participated in South African politics, they have fundamentally shaped its course. Their personal stories of sacrifice, ambition and sometimes failure are intertwined with the nation's own journey from the darkness of apartheid into the complicated light of democracy. The impact of these dynasties is undeniable. They have built institutions, led movements, and occupied the highest offices in the land. Their names carry a weight that can open doors and win votes, creating a political landscape where legacy and lineage matter deeply. But it also raises important questions for a democracy. How does a nation ensure that power is accessible to all, not just those with a famous surname? How does it balance respecting the sacrifices of the past with holding the leaders of the present accountable? It's a debate that is very much alive in South Africa today. These families have left an indelible mark on the country, for better and for worse, and their stories are far from over. New generations are stepping up, and the influence of these dynasties will continue to evolve. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments which family you think has had the biggest influence on South Africa's political landscape. Was it the moral authority of the Mandelas, the long-standing power of the Buthelezis, or the controversial era of the Zumas? I can't wait to read your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.